Alright, you guys seem to absolutely love my transfer portal videos, especially when it comes to the quarterback position, so I decided to come up with 10 more quarterbacks who I think could or should enter the 2025 transfer portal. The video is very self-explanatory, but before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about 10 more quarterbacks who should enter the 2025 transfer portal. Also, I want to give a shout out to the viewers of the channel, as some of the guys in today's video were suggested by you guys in the last one. Okay, the first guy we're to talk about is one of those players, and that is Andrew Boley. I will not pretend that I follow HBCU football or know much about him, but Andrew Boley is one of the best stories in all of college football. He ended up going to Miller High School in Corpus Christi, Texas, and I mean nobody wanted this guy coming out of high school. That was despite passing for over 13,000 yards, including 4,400 yards and 48 touchdowns as a senior. I have absolutely no idea why nobody wanted this guy, and his only offer would be from Texas Southern. After playing 3 years at Texas Southern, he would transfer to Alabama State ahead of the 2024 season, but after suffering a shoulder injury, he would miss the entire season. He also barely played in 2023, but as a full-time starter so far in 2025, Boley has passed for 1,700 yards and 20 touchdowns with only 1 interception. He's also carried the ball 71 times for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, and I'm starting to see some hype for him. I believe he has 1 more year of eligibility left, and if that is true, I think he'll end up transferring up to the FBS level and probably play for a Group of 5 school. If he somehow hasn't thought about it, he should. For a second guy, this may come off as controversial, but I think Malik Washington should enter the 2025 transfer portal. He was the number 5 quarterback in the class of 2025 and someone who was supposed to change the direction of Maryland football. At 6'5", he went to Archbishop Spalding High School in Maryland and ended up being pretty incredible while he was there. He ended up throwing for 2,000 yards and 30 total touchdowns and became one of the highest ranked quarterbacks to ever go to Maryland. After winning the starting job over Justin Martin, he so far has thrown for 2,300 yards with 13 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. He's also a threat on the ground as he has 4 scored. But the problem for Malik Washington is that Maryland just sucks. I think as a whole their culture isn't great, and while Mike Locksley might be an awesome person, I don't think he's a great football coach, and I don't want him to waste Malik Washington's talent or stunt his development. Honestly, I think Malik could definitely transfer to another big time school, and I think he should enter the portal. For our third player, we're to go over to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and talk about quarterback Jaden Davis. He is someone I've talked about on the channel a ton, as going back in time, he was actually considered the number 1 overall recruit during his sophomore year. He ended up going to Providence Day High School, and this is the same school that produced Will Grier. He ended up throwing for 3,400 yards and 43 touchdowns as a senior, and he would end up committing to Michigan, but would fall to the number 9 quarterback in the country. Jaden Davis arrived at Michigan in 2024, and despite a horrendous quarterback room and bad quarterback play, Jaden would never step foot on the field. I've heard mixed things about that, as potentially he volunteered not to play. So far though, he is now the backup to Bryce Underwood, and in 2 passes, he's thrown an interception and has been sacked. It has been very rough for Jaden at Michigan, and Bryce Underwood is the future, and with them bringing in both Brady Smeagol and Tommy Carr, I see no reason why Jaden should hang around. He should transfer while he still has some stock, and I don't know, maybe he can go save the Charlotte 49ers program. You wanna know why I love quarterback recruiting and think it's so fascinating? Well, it's because of a guy like Cutter Boley. Coming out of Lexington Christian Academy, Boley was the next big thing, and was honestly seen as a prodigy. He'd end up throwing for 8,300 yards and 82 touchdowns, but 17 more on the ground, and at one point, him and George McIntyre, who's at Tennessee right now, were considered top 10 recruits. I mean, Kentucky had literally landed a 5-star quarterback who was going to change the face of their program, but he would decide to reclassify, and scouts couldn't decide if he was a 3 or a 4. It's insane. Boley would play a little bit in 2024 as a backup, and so far this year, after losing the job to Calzada, he has taken over since then, throwing for 1,800 yards and 13 touchdowns. While he does have 8 interceptions, the Kentucky offense and quarterback coaching is pretty inept, and everybody knows that Cutter has plenty of talent and a super high ceiling, which is why some think he should transfer, including myself. I think Boley could be a star in college football and should go to a school that has more resources and more weapons to help him get the most out of his game. Speaking of that other guy who was originally a 5-star, let's talk about George McIntyre. He is related to former Colorado head coach Mike McIntyre, and at 6'6", George was going to be the next big thing. He ended up going to Brentwood Academy in Tennessee, And as I said, George at one point was a top 10 recruit and had decided to commit to Tennessee. He threw for over 8,000 yards and 62 touchdowns in 36 high school games, but for some dumb and unknown reason, McIntyre was bumped. He had a similar situation to Boley, except he didn't end up reclassifying. George would end up as the number 13 quarterback in the country, and things got interesting when Nico would decide to transfer, but George has settled in as the third string quarterback. Going into next year, they'll still bring back Jake Merklinger, and they bring in 5-star recruit FaZe and Brandon. I also bet Heupel brings in a transfer, so I think George should just get ahead of it and transfer to another school, and maybe go somewhere like Vanderbilt. I don't know. For player number 6, I want to talk about Malachi Singleton. It is well known that Purdue is the worst Power 4 team in college football, and I'm not sure if things are getting any better for them anytime soon. Malachi Singleton was a pretty big deal coming out of North Cobb High School. As located in the city of Kennesaw, Georgia, he became the number 26 quarterback and a 4-star recruit in the class of 2023. Singleton was a dual-threat quarterback who had 2,300 yards and 24 touchdowns, to go alongside 1,000 yards and 25 touchdowns. He would decide to commit and play for the Arkansas Razorbacks, where he was the backup to Taylon Green, and ended up actually coming in relief duty against Tennessee, where he would lead them to an upset win. Taylon Green would announce he was coming back, so Singleton would decide to transfer. He'd elect to go to Purdue, where I thought he was going to win the starting job, but they ended up bringing back Ryan Brown after his weird transfer portal saga, and the Purdue staff continues to go at Ryan Brown, even though Singleton is probably the better player. So far, in backup duties, Singleton has passed for about 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, and has also ran for 200 yards. He brings a different element to Purdue's offense they desperately need, but it seems like the coaching staff doesn't realize that. I think Singleton should go ahead and transfer because 1, he should find a school that fits him better, and 2, if he actually wants to win some football games, he needs to leave West Lafayette. For our next player, I want to talk about Demond Williams Jr., the quarterback for the Washington Huskies. I've been hearing about this guy for quite some time, as he was sort of compared to Kyler Murray coming out of high school. I'd say the comparison was somewhat reasonable, as while he was at Basha High School in Chandler, Arizona, he was sort of everywhere. He passed for over 10,000 yards and 93 touchdowns, and also ran for about 3,000 yards and 42 touchdowns. He had originally decided to commit to Jedd Fisch in Arizona, but after he decided to take the Washington job, Demond Williams Jr. would follow him. After Will Rogers would struggle, Demond would take over the back half of the 2024 season and showed lots of potential. He passed for about 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, and so far as the starter in 2025, Demond has thrown for 2,500 yards with 17 scores, and has also ran for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. With Jedd Fisch probably leaving Washington at some point soon, he could either follow him there, or maybe go to a school like LSU. I kept seeing that in my comment section. Either way, for one reason or another, I do not think that Demond Williams Jr. will be a Husky next year. Up next, we need to talk about Nico. He was the number 1 guy in the 2025 portal, and I think he'll be back in the 2026 portal. I don't think he's good enough to go off to the NFL, and at this point, you know his story. And he'd arrive at Tennessee on a huge NIL deal, and threw for 2,600 yards and 19 touchdowns before getting stomped by Ohio State in the playoff. He wanted more money, Josh Heupel showed him the door, and he left to go to UCLA, where so far this year, it has been pretty bad for him. He's thrown for 1,600 yards with 12 touchdowns and 7 picks, and while he has been a little bit better on the ground, Nico's season has not gone according to plan, and I think he should enter the portal one more time and go somewhere that can salvage his career. For our second to last guy, we're going to talk about JMU quarterback Alonza Barnett III. A bunch of people commented about why I left him off the list last time, and it's because I thought he was out of eligibility this year. I'm still not sure if he does have a year left, but if someone knows, please let me know down in the comment section below. Coming out of Grimsley High School in North Carolina, Alonza wasn't exactly the biggest name. At only 6 foot, he was listed as the number 179 quarterback in the class of 2022, and he'd arrive at James Madison with not a lot of fanfare. Alonza wouldn't play in his first 2 seasons and would finally take over as the starter in 2024, throwing for 2,600 yards and 26 touchdowns, while also rushing for 442 yards and 7 touchdowns. So far in 2025, he's led JMU to a near-perfect season, and he has over 2,000 yards and 16 touchdowns with 12 scores on the ground. Barnett is a true dual-threat star, and sort of like the Jedd Fisch situation, I think Barnett will follow Bob Chesney wherever he goes, but if Chesney decides to stay, I think he'll stay put. And finally, the last guy I want to talk about in today's video is Aiden Childs, the current quarterback for Michigan State. After being the backup quarterback to Malachi Nelson early on in high school, he would decide to transfer, and Aiden Childs actually became a huge deal. His first big offer was from Jonathan Smith at Oregon State, and that came after throwing for 3,300 yards and 38 touchdowns as a senior. He would elect to commit to Oregon State and was bumped to a 4-star recruit and spent his first year behind DJ at Oregon State. He would then decide to follow Jonathan Smith to East Lansing, where he's now been a starting quarterback for 2 years and has not been great. He has 4,000 passing yards and 23 passing touchdowns, and also has 9 rushing scores. He's been a pretty subpar starting quarterback, has not really developed, and I think he needs to change things up. I think he needs to get away from Jonathan Smith and go to a different coach in place that can get the most out of him. Childs has so much potential, and it'd be a shame to see him go down as a bust. Yeah, today we talked about 10 quarterbacks who I think should also enter the portal, and what do you guys think? Where should these guys go? Who else should enter the portal? And what other topics should I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.